And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the leadership that you have shown in this whole area, and we welcome the Secretary to be with us today. As the Chairman indicated when he began, we are meeting in an unusual facility for us at an unusual time and dealing with a subject that I think many of us would have hoped never to have to deal with. But I think as Americans and as the United States government, it is imperative for us now to take the hardest look that we can at the most nightmarish situations that we can imagine. I think that's what the American people want, and they want us to come up with the best solutions that we can come up with. This is not pleasant. We're not happy about it, but that's something that we have to do. Let me tell you just very briefly some of the areas that I am concerned about. Number one, that in fact we have to lay out what the plans may be of fiendish minds who want to destroy Americans. And it's not a pleasant intellectual scenario to get into, but we have to do that. And then we have to determine from a counterterrorism point of view, how can we prevent the implementation of those plans? There is in the report information that we have received from the committee, indications that a 1993 report by the U.S. Congressional Office of Technology Assessment estimated that between 130,000 and 3 million deaths could follow the aerosolized release of 220 pounds of anthrax spores upwind of the Washington, D.C. area. In other words, it is conceivable that somebody flying in a two-seat passenger plane can do horrendous damage to this country. How do we stop that? Very difficult, but questions that we have got to ask. In the event that a tragedy occurs, how do we make certain that our people are immunized? If people become sick, what procedures are in place to treat them? The truth of the matter is, and let me disagree with my friend a moment ago who talked about our system being the strongest in the world. In many ways, we are not the strongest healthcare system in the world. If, God forbid, a disaster struck us today in a large city, do we really believe that millions of people know where to go in a short period of time to get the medicine that they need? We have 44 million people who have no health insurance whatsoever. We have tens of millions of people who don't know who their physician is. We do not, in fact, have a strong public health infrastructure in this country, and I think we should use this crisis to build one so that if, God forbid, there is a tragedy, and if we are able, and I'm sure the Secretary will talk about this, get the medicine and the drugs out to people to make sure that those drugs are distributed in a way that people can calmly receive them rather than develop a sense of panic about where they go and so forth. The other issue that I want to touch upon, Mr. Secretary, and you know that this is an issue of deep concern to me, is the role of the pharmaceutical industry in this whole situation. I am concerned and have been concerned for years that the pharmaceutical industry remains year after year the most profitable industry in this country, and that they charge the people in the United States by far the highest prices in the world. Now, that may be a discussion for another day, but what is appropriate today, if we are dealing with Cipro and if we are dealing with vaccines, it is incumbent upon our government to tell the pharmaceutical industry that they can forget about their profits, that we need that product, as much of that product as we need, as quickly as possible, and we need it at a cost that is affordable for individuals and for the United States government. You are aware, no doubt, that the Canadian government said to Bayer, I guess, who manufactures Cipro, thank you, but no thank you, we will do a generic. My understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that in India, there is a generic that sells for 3 cents a pill, compared to what an American consumer, the $4 or $5 that an American consumer would pay going to a drugstore here. Now, if that is true, there is something to be learned from that. My point here, sir, is that we've got to protect the American people and not pharmaceutical industry profits, and we've got to tell them to come online and work with us. So there are a whole lot of issues out there. This is an uncharted territory. I know that you, Mr. Secretary, are working as hard as you can, and we will work with you. And let's see if we can go forward to make sure that the American people have the protection to which they are entitled. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, and then we'll get to you, Mr. Secretary. I recognize the ranking member of the committee, Mr. Kucinich. And I'm learning that these mics are very, you don't need to get too close to them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for